Welcome to the August 10th meeting of the City of Lake Forest Plan Commission. My name is John Dixon, and I'm chairman of the Plan Commission. At this time, I'd like the other members to introduce themselves. I'll start on the far left.
Steve LaMontagne.
Louis Pickus.
Jamie Moorhead.
Mark Pasquesi.
And from the City of Lake Forest, we have Kathy Ciernak here tonight. There are no minutes to approve. The minutes from our May 11th meeting will be at the September meeting. The first matter and only matter before the commission this evening is a special use permit to allow a berm to be constructed at a height exceeding 7 feet at 934 Longwood Road, adjacent to the railroad tracks. Property owners John and Margaret Burke. At this point, I'd like to ask any of the commission members if there's any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications in regards to this matter.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say for the record that I'm a neighbor of this property and this petitioner. I have not had any conversations with the petitioner, but we did receive the packet as a resident. And my wife has written a letter to the commission regarding this petition, and she's in the audience as well tonight. So just want to make sure that it's open and on the record.
And I just might ask on the record, Commissioner Pickus, do you feel like you can render an objective opinion on this matter before the commission this evening?
I do.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. At this point, I'd like to swear in anyone who thinks that they might provide testimony either in support or opposition of the matter on the agenda or anything else. Everybody in the audience is standing. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Thank you. I'll ask the petitioner at this time to come forward to the podium for their presentation. Welcome, Mr. Swarthout.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, Kathy, Mrs. Pickus, nice to meet all of you. I know I reached out to the Pickuses some time ago to participate in the berm. My name is Tom Swarthout. I'm the president of the Highview Group. I was lucky enough to be asked to modify and improve the home on Longwood for Molly and John Burke, who can't be with us this evening. John is a longtime resident of Lake Forest. Those who know anything about the Burke family, there's a lot of them. John grew up on Green Bay Road. Wonderful family. John and Molly traveled through business, were out of the area for some time, and relocated back to his home and purchased a home at 934 Longwood. And now they're going through a renovation. And when John approached me about the project, it needed some significant updating, and we were sitting in his backyard, and one train after another went by. I suggested, being in the business for many, many years, that there might be an opportunity to put a berm up, and being half Italian, I know there's quite a few excavators who would like to remove some of their soils and deposit them at no charge. So we chatted about it, and over the course of the months, it became more and more a real opportunity. Their home does face northeast, and their backyard, we added a 3-season room that will be open year-round, and they'll hopefully enjoy not just the summer months, but the winter months as well. They too are very concerned about some of the removal of the trees, so a tree survey was conducted, and there are a number of trees that are in that right-of-way, none of them that we think are significant. Nevertheless, we wanted to move forward with the project, and we are lucky also that the City of Lake Forest is undertaking a major project on the north end of Western Avenue that most of you may be aware of. That contractor is agreed and, in fact, is enthused about removing those soils and bringing them up to Longwood rather than spend many hours and a lot of fuel to move those spoils to Zion. So I think it's a real benefit not only to the city, but to the adjacent homeowners, not just the Burke family, but those who live on Longwood as well. So we're here to appeal for a height variance. The front elevation, the first floor of the Burke home is at the same elevation as the railroad tracks. As you see in your packet, there was a right-of-way. Western Avenue was going to connect to Wesley Road, and that was abandoned. And so the homes on Beverly are quite deep for the most part. And I think most of those people benefit. I think they acquired those lands free at one point from the city. So joining me tonight is Mike Bleck, a very well-qualified lifelong resident of Lake Forest who does significant work in the city. And Mike and I have partnered on a number of projects, including Lake Forest Hospital, well aware of the berm issues. One of the descriptions I give people when talking about Lake Forest and in comparison to Lake Bluff or Highland Park is when you drive into Lake Forest, all you see is green, whether it's on 41, Waukegan Road, Route 60. We take a lot of pride in that. Our industry is housing, and you can see the berms that have been constructed on all our major arteries. Over the years, they've been well planted, and few people know that there's homes behind those great residents, whether they're on Wesley Road, on the Owensia Gardens or the Ponds, or on Waukegan Road, even the Knollwood Country Club, as well as the hospital. So with that, I'll have Mike kind of walk you through our design. It isn't complete. This is a preliminary plan. The Burkes would like to spend their money on their home, knowing that this project would be approved. They'll move on to the full engineering drawings that would certainly mitigate any concern that might be that either the Pickuses have or any residents about drainage. So with that, I'd ask Mike to walk you through that preliminary plan.
Good evening. Thanks, Tom. Good evening. I guess I'll just spend a few minutes and kind of touch on drainage, because I know that's always a concern. So this is a 2020 aerial. The subject property is right here, Fort Sheridan across the way. And you could see a ravine up just opposite the Burke's house. This is Jane's Ravine. A little bit further north, you get McCormick Ravine. Drainage in this area is generally trying to get from west to east to Lake Michigan. We zoom in a little bit more. So this is a little closer view. There's a culvert under the railroad tracks and the bike path in Sheridan Road that gets the drainage across through at this point. Likewise, there's a finger of Jane's Ravine that comes up, and there's a culvert up in this area as well. This one right here, we were out looking at yesterday. It's a 48-inch steel pipe. I didn't get a chance to look at the one to the north. Next slide. So this is the county topo from 2017, and you can see the ravines over on the other side of Sheridan Road. This is McCormick Ravine. This is Jane's Ravine. Big picture. The red contours are 5-foot contours. The yellow ones are 1-foot contours. It's a little difficult to see in this picture, but this red one here is 705. This one is 700, 695. So the drainage is kind of heading in that direction. To the east of Burke's, it drains to the east. So there's a sort of a saddle in the railroad drainage on the west side of the railroad tracks, where some of this drainage heads this way and gets out, and some of it heads that way and gets out. Now with this concept berm that we have in here, it doesn't really change the drainage at all. You have the high point at the top. So what's being proposed is a 2-to-1 side slope with a flat area on top, so it could be planted. Flat areas like 5 to 10 foot areas, so you can get some plantings up there, and then slope back down at 2-to-1. So this particular one, just because of the way the drainage is sort of kind of going that way, so the top point here would just drain off towards the railroad tracks. Part of this would drain down towards this 4-foot culvert, and some of it would drain towards the north. The plan is to have this planted in native grasses with deep roots, so that would keep it stable and absorb a lot of water. And that's all I have to present at this time. Thank you.
I do want to touch on the noise factor, and there have been instances where people are a little concerned about the noise and the way it bounces off a berm. Clearly, there's no one to the east, so any issue that may develop, the perception that may develop that noise would bounce to the east, there's no one to the east. And so I know Kathy has wrestled with that on occasion with other residents. That became somewhat delicate, but in this case, there won't be. And though we think the berm will be 12 to 14 feet high, it still won't completely cover a train that would may go by. But we think it's just a real quality of life issue for the Burks. They have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old and another on the way. Want to be able to enjoy their backyard. And some of the trees that are being removed, the vast majority are deciduous, buckthorn, ash, cottonwood. There's a lot of water that's just sitting there. I know the Pickses probably know more than I do about this issue, but it's not our desire to remove any significant trees, and that's why we think this is a great opportunity for all. With that, we'll happy to answer any and all your questions.
Thank you for now, Mr. Swarthout. Thank you so much. I'll turn to the city and Ms. Ciernak to identify any of the issues from the city's perspective.
Thank you, Chairman Dixon. This petition is in front of you because in a residential district, a berm exceeding 7 feet in height can only be approved through a special use permit. As Mr. Swarthout mentioned, there are a number of berms that were constructed as part of subdivisions along Route 60, along Wesley, both at Wesley Farms along 60 and Conway Farms. Those are approved through the subdivision process. The only other residential berm that I recall in my time here is the berm that was constructed actually by David Moore at the west end of on Wensia, right as it meets Awani. His backyard is that curve in 41, and that was an immense berm, and that particular berm involved IDOT, but that was the closest project to something like this, although this berm is much smaller. Engineering has looked at the preliminary plan that you received in your packet. Engineering is also doing the Burr Oak storm sewer project. So their interest in this, or it piqued their interest when they heard that perhaps some of the dirt that will be removed beginning in the next few weeks for the storm trap, which will be a large container that will be placed under Western Avenue, that dirt could be excavated and deposited locally. That was of interest to them. As I said, they did look at the preliminary plan. What they said is that there isn't enough here for engineering to issue a permit or for engineering to approve it. And I think what we heard from the Burks is that they wanted to go through this process before they spent more money completing a tree survey, although it sounds like perhaps that's done now. Doing final engineering, preparing information on how the slopes will be stabilized and what the landscape plan will be, how that berm will be vegetated. You're certainly not going to be mowing that berm, so we'd be looking for some type of native landscaping on that berm. So engineering acknowledged that there's a lot of work to do. If you choose to move this forward tonight, the special use permit would go to the city council, while at the same time, engineering would be working with the petitioners, and if any neighbors are interested, sharing that information with neighbors and getting input before any permits could be issued. No work could occur, no tree removal, no regrading, no depositing of dirt until a permit is issued by the engineering section. You do have a recommendation in support of the project, in your staff report, you have 3 or 4 conditions of approval that really speak to some of those next steps that need to occur. I would be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question, Kathy. So I'm struggling to figure out how the timing of all of this works. It kind of feels like the train's left the station, so to speak, right? The dirt's coming out here in a few weeks, and it sounds like there's significant engineering to be done. Is that, what am I missing?
The dirt's coming out regardless. That project has been planned for years. A grant was obtained, and they moved forward with the project. So if that dirt doesn't go here, it was always planned to go somewhere else. There are more than that project going on in this community or locally. So if it's not that dirt, theoretically, the Burkes could use dirt from somewhere else. But yes, this just happened to pique the interest of engineering staff. But again, no approvals have been granted, and the detailed plans that are needed have not yet been submitted. So the train hasn't left the station. There's just a vision that perhaps there could be some mutual benefit.
And I'd like to follow up a little bit on that, because I had the same question. With regards, if in fact the dirt's coming up in a matter of a few weeks, is there any realistic chance of getting detailed draining and grading plans approved by then? Or is that unlikely?
The dirt will start to come out in a few weeks. The dirt will take, there's going to be more dirt than will be needed in this berm. So the dirt will start to come out, but it will continue to be excavated for some time. So again, whether that timeline coincides or not, if it doesn't, there are other sources of dirt. But
I know, Mr. Chairman, this is the question and answer for your board. I just wanted to add to that point.
Please.
I've seen berms go up and they take months, sometimes years. Because of this opportunity with the city, it gets completed quite quickly. So you don't have to wait for some guy building a house down the street, maybe 2 miles away, and then bringing the dirt there. 4 weeks later, another 5 loads come. It's all done. It's done quite quickly and consistently, and you know it's good clay Lake Forest dirt and not refrigerators and toilets and everything underneath that we've sometimes seen in the past. So I would just add that comment, sir.
So
I believe Mr. Black can answer how long it would take to have engineering complete.
I believe our survey crew has already done the field work, so for me to do the plan, it'd be like a day's worth of work maybe. It's not a big project for us really.
So we're not talking months then to get to
No,
the
I
answer.
would say, a week maybe.
Got it. I'm just trying to consider the ESG effects of like reducing carbon emissions by not putting, getting it out of town and being able to use it within native lake forest. So I'm just trying to process in my
I
head.
appreciate that. This is the purpose of this point in the discussion here, is to ask the questions to the city and to the petitioner. I have a follow-up question from both the questions that were asked. So putting the dirt aside for a moment, no pun intended, the petitioner just stated, Mr. Bleck stated that their study could be done in a day. That comes to the city then. Can you just give a little more detail to the commission here as to what the city does, what the report is that's produced by the city, and what conclusions are in that report? Because I guess I'm not familiar with what that report would look like once the city gets the information.
as Mr. Black said, this is, it's not a complicated project.
And I'm not
Certainly,
trying to
we wanna
overcomplicate, right.
Get the drainage right, but it's a contained project. Engineering staff, again, this opportunity to use the dirt has piqued their interest. They know this is before you tonight. My sense is if they get the plans, they're going to look at them very quickly. The city engineer will review the plans, certainly in the context not only of the berm itself, but we'll look at the surrounding topography. We'll look at the adequacy of storm sewers or culverts or whatever needs to be looked at. The city arborist will look at the tree survey, evaluate the trees to be removed, evaluate the quality of the species, the condition of the trees, and determine whether those would result in replacement inches. Certainly healthy heritage oaks result in replacement inches. Ash trees don't. My sense is in this area that there probably are not many high-quality trees. So city engineer would be involved, city arborist would be involved. Certainly, we'd be happy to share, as soon as we get the plans, share them with any of the neighbors and get their input. An on-site meeting is possible if that would be helpful. But the city engineer, once he is comfortable, once the city arborist is comfortable, they would essentially stamp the plans approved, and we would move forward with issuing tree removal permits, if they found the plans to be satisfactory, grading permits, and then look at a re-landscaping plan, which could come a bit down the road. That wouldn't be something that we'd need to issue the permit. So that would be the process.
And the city engineer could also come to the conclusion that the drainage can't be satisfied to the extent that the city is comfortable, to the impact on neighbors, to the impact on where the water would go off this berm. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, there's no guarantee that the city engineer will approve the plan, but we also know that Black Engineering is very diligent and has experience, is very familiar with the city storm system, with the city requirements. So my expectation is there may be some discussion about aspects of the plan or maybe some suggestions for modification, but I doubt that a plan will be put forward that is deemed completely unworkable. I believe that probably some preliminary work has been done to say a berm here is possible.
So is it is it realistic that that packet would come together? So the city arborist report, the drainage report, by the time it goes to the city council, and could they be a bit of a final approving body, if you will?
Given the timeline that Mr. Black just stated, yes, that is possible.
Are there any other commissioners that have questions either for the city staff or the petitioners themselves?
Not at the
I have
moment.
I have a question for Kathy. Who maintains the culverts under the tracks?
The city.
And do we know what the condition of those are?
I don't, but certainly as part of our review, I would expect that we would send someone from our water sewer section out there to do an inspection. And we would probably also get information from Black Engineering, who has been out there at least to look at one of them.
The south one that we looked at yesterday had no debris in it. It was good. I didn't get down to see the north one.
I do have a question for the petitioner.
Please.
What's the magic of the 13-foot number?
I think it's based on the 2-to-1 kind of slope at this point. I would love to get it a little higher, but then a flat area for potential planting in the future. But it won't be mowed. There is a different, there's a change of theory about berms and even bluffs. I mean, you may be aware of the bluff that's on our lakefront, that there's going to be an extensive renovation and restoration of the bluff and removal of many of the trees. And that's to stabilize, and so we would plant native plants, mostly grasses, that would actually stabilize that bluff or those berms. So I don't have any, there's just no chance that there would be any sloping on that 2-to-1, which is not a 45, that's a 2-to-1, yeah.
Okay, so it's not driven from visibility or anything like that. That's where I was headed with it.
No, I
As
mean,
far as
certainly, I think going
stabilization.
higher would be more advantageous. We've looked at the Metra specs on the train, and I think it's up to almost 18 feet. So you're not going to completely obscure, the train that goes by. But it's an effort, and I think it will be somewhat helpful, so.
And just to call to your attention, I understood that the request was for a maximum height of 13, but Mr. Swarthout, I think you mentioned 12 to 14.
Yep.
So if that's the case, providing that additional, if you choose to move forward, providing that additional foot may make sense so we can get the slope right and have a little bit of room
Right,
to maneuver.
right. I would point out that the railroad tracks slope, that stone, is on a 1-to-1 pitch. So it's all stone, but challenging to walk up, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Just to ask a very simple question, the berm that was built, and there's obviously a lot of variables in the question that I'm about to ask, but just looking at the berm that was done in a residential area at 385 on Wensia Road, Mr. Moore's, obviously much larger, but still a residential area. The city, do you recall, Kathy, what the city did at that time? Was there any issues with neighbors? Because that's a sort of a dense neighborhood area there as well.
I believe what took time was working with IDOT in that case. And it wasn't only the footprint of the berm itself, but some of the impact of doing work near 41. So I think that had some different issues. Some of the neighbors were involved, and in that case, it may be that some of the berm actually goes on to some of the neighboring properties. I don't remember the specifics. But it was a lengthy discussion, and the city worked closely with, at that time, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, and we did that berm for David. And I think you hit it, you got the concept right on that.
And drainage issues at that time, Mr. Black, for that? I mean,
Yeah,
and
there was-
again, not trying to compare it, that one was much larger, but still in a residential area.
Yeah, so, you're building this berm, so you do have to take in consideration drainage. And I can't remember exactly how that was handled, whether we put a pipe through the berm, or I think on the east side of the berm, we had some swales to get the water out from behind his house out towards 41. But it all worked out well.
Okay, thank you.
Are we asking petitioner as well, or just city still?
No, this is a time to ask petitioners question as well as the city. So are there any other,
Yeah,
before we open up to public
Yeah,
testimony?
I'd like to ask,
Please.
Mike, if you could maybe walk us through the topo again a little bit. Kind of went through that a little quickly, and
Sure.
because I thought I heard you say that it was almost neutral, the top of the berm for where the current grades are. And that did make sense. So I missed
Well,
something.
so the concept is to slope up at a 2-to-1 and then get up to a certain elevation, have it sort of flat on the top, and then slope back on down. And the topography for the Burke's house, as well as like the next 2 to 3 houses to the west, are generally sloping like northeasterly, like towards your backyard, towards where that culvert is.
Right.
When you get onto the east side of the Burks, then it starts to drain more due east right towards the railroad tracks. I think like the northwest corner of their property does drain off towards yours. So like the difference between what it's doing now and what it would do with the berm is, I think, very negligible, because the southern part of it will still drain towards the 4-foot culvert to the south, which is let's zoom in, Matt. So from right about here, this slopes pretty good down towards Western Avenue. And then here's the culvert, and there's a manhole right there that the city storm sewer dumps into. And then you can see the contours here that are kind of like going north, northwest or northeasterly. And then this part of Burke's lot starts to get the contours going more in a north east-west direction. So this is draining this way. So with the berm, you'd have the top of the berm roughly in here. The back side of it would drain off towards the railroad tracks and get into the railroad ditch. And then this part would drain out onto their lawn and continue that way. This part would drain towards their driveway and continue that way. So it's, very little change in the drainage pattern. You are changing it from, the one good thing about it is it's not impervious. So it's still going to be pervious surface. It's changing from trees to grasses.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions to the petitioner or to the city? At this time, we'll take public testimony. Is there anybody here to provide public testimony on this matter? Please come forward to the podium. State your name for the record, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Pickus, and I did write a letter to the Plan Commission board members, and I just wanted to reiterate a few points that I made in my letter. I live on Beverly Place, and although my entrance is around the corner from the proposed berm location and the homeowner's property, my backyard is just 2 properties north of the proposed berm location. My biggest concern as a homeowner, of course, is the impact to the surrounding neighbors, and of course, huge concern when there's a significant amount of rain from a storm and the amount of time it takes for the accumulated rainwater to drain from our yard. So I have concerns about the drainage of the water, as we've clearly stated or discussed, and living in our home for 20 years, we've seen a lot of rainwater coming our direction, and I'm not excited about seeing more coming our way. It also looks like there's a significant number of trees that will be taken down for this project, and my question would be to the homeowners, what are they trying to shield themselves from? The sights, the sounds, the location, or all of the above regarding the train and the tracks. I guess, not that it's any of my business, but I'm not sure how a berm would better serve you in comparison to the natural shield we already have of the dense forest of trees. I am not in favor of cutting down trees to replace them with a berm. I believe they're a beautiful year-round point of scenery to have, and they provide a sanctuary for the various wildlife we have living in this forested area. And not to mention, I believe the trees provide a natural shield to those of us living closer to the train tracks when we have trains passing by. And in closing, I'd just like to say that my husband Louis and I have lived closer to the train tracks than most of our Beverly Place neighbors for the last 20 years. This is because our house sits further back off the street, and we personally have never had any issues with excessive noise, nor have we had any problems with our children wanting to play near the tracks when they were younger. We all know the train tracks are part of the Lake Forest geography and something everyone deals with on one level or another by living here. I can say it hasn't been an issue for me, but I don't think the answer is taking down trees and building up the earth to provide protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other final questions from any commissioners to the city, to the petitioner? I have one question back to the petitioner. So we've heard some comments in regards to the property, the northern end of the property here. Is there anything that can be done to mitigate the water on the northern end? Mrs. Pickus just talked about, the southern end of her property and water there. Is there anything that can be done to capture the water there and divert it either maybe further east or help it continue to go east, or is that not possible?
I think that, frankly, taking out some of the deadwood, the buckthorn primarily in that area, walking around there, it's very swampy. The Burks lost a tree, oak tree did come down on the utility line. And in fact, they're going to bore a new service underground because it is so wet back there. I think removing a lot of that buckthorn, frankly, in that area will certainly help the drainage significantly, because now you're getting natural light there, and the drainage, I think, it will dry out. And if you walk back there, it's kind of a mosquito haven. Spent a lot of time on the Open Lands Board, and my summers were taking out buckthorn, and that's a significant area that, I think that's going to help quite a bit, and I think, there's no question, I think the drainage will be not increased. It may not decrease, but I don't think it will have any impact, certainly on the Piccases. And we did talk to the marshals too, who are adjacent, and talked to Larry about the project and joining up, and he was concerned about removal of trees, and he did have some significant trees, so we just stopped the berm at that point. Otherwise, we would have continued it up, and did reach out to the Piccases to see if they wanted to participate, because I could see this going all the way down to the Wesley Road at some point, but that's a big pull, so we just left it as is. But no, we don't, certainly, and to respond to Mrs. Pickus, the Burks are concerned about any removal of trees too. They had that same reaction. Are we gonna benefit greater by removing some of these trees? And, the conclusion was yes. So, they're moving forward. They don't wanna take anything that's down, that's significant, and we don't think we are, so.
But the earth is going to be moved, a great deal of earth is going to be moved all along the berm in and of itself and on the
Right.
property, right? So I'm sure, and maybe Mr. Bleck can speak to it, are swales, Mr. Swarthout, going to be made so that the water that's there as the berm is being built up to do something with that water? Is that?
I would imagine. I would let Mike respond, but yeah, you want to move the water, for sure.
That's something that we would definitely take a close look at in the final design, whether we could swale around the north end of the berm and get it into the ditch on to the railroad, or if we have to punch through with a culvert underneath it. So there are opportunities that we will look at in final design.
Okay, thank you. Any rebuttal from the petitioner? I think we've obviously covered the issue pretty well. Anything additional from staff? At this point, the testimony and comment period is now closed on this. At this point in the process, the commission members have the opportunity to discuss the issues amongst ourselves. I'll start maybe on my far right with Commissioner Pasquesi.
My general thoughts on this are, my initial impression was I thought it was, the plan in of itself was a good one. I had concerns about drainage and trees. I defer to, the city engineers and the city arborists to give final approval on that, and I like staff's recommendation with regards to the additional conditions for approval. So with those conditions, I'm in favor of this petition.
Thank you.
I agree for all the same reasons.
Thank you. Commissioner Pickus.
I'll, for obvious reasons, I'll state, there's a lot of concern on my end about the drainage. Mike provided good answers to the questions. I'm sort of in the feeling the same as the other commissioners that, without the final engineering, without seeing kind of what truly is going to be done here, it's kind of hard to say. But I think in that respect, you got to leave it to the city to, do their due diligence and make sure that it does meet the code and won't have impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. So from a special use perspective, I guess I can't say that I have any objections.
Thank you. Commissioner Amatane.
Yeah, very, very similar to the other commissioners. I mean, when I read through the staff recommendation, it's written very well, right? There's not a whole lot here in front of us to make a final decision, but with these steps, I think that we would mitigate any concerns, provided the professionals weighed in on this. I do like the idea of, like I said, the ESG effects and reducing carbon emissions by not having trucks move across the road and move the dirt out of Lake Forest. So if we can make that work from a timing perspective, that would be great. I think from a tree perspective, my preference is that if there are replacement inches that are required, that they in fact plant trees as opposed to the payment in lieu of, so we don't have a naked berm, if you will. So trees sitting on that flat area as designed, along with the deep-rooted grasses for retention as well. So I'm in favor.
And I think I would echo the comments that have been made. Certainly, the city staff has a lot of work to do here, and the recommendation to approve this special use permit would certainly be subject to city staff comments, the report from the petitioner and Mr. Black as well. I like Commissioner LaMontagne's suggestion in regards to the replacement in trees and not cost. I would add also, I feel as if the petitioner, a lifelong resident, and also the contractors and the engineers are all lifelong residents here that understand the sensitivity of the drainage issues in Lake Forest, and certainly feel comfortable knowing the fact that they, and this doesn't sound contrite, would do the right thing here for not only the Burks, but the surrounding neighbors, to be able to make sure that this berm does not cause a greater impact to any of the surrounding neighborhoods, and is an asset not only to the Burks, but also the surrounding neighbors, not only from an aesthetic standpoint, but an engineering standpoint, to allow that water, whether it be on the north end or in the middle of the berm, to flow through and not be an obstacle to the flow of water, and if anything, improve the flow of water, especially there on the north end. So those are my comments as well.
Are we okay allowing the berm to be a height of no more than 14 feet instead of 13? I think that was discussed. Okay.
Would someone like to make a motion? Maybe Commissioner Moorhead, since you're right there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Right there in the weeds.
Yeah, right there in the weeds.
Motion to approve special use permit to allow a berm exceeding 7 feet on a residential property for the property located at 934 Longwood Road, subject to, in accordance with the staff recommendation report, staff report and recommendation dated August 10th, 2022, subject to the revision that the berm be no more than 14 feet above existing grade, and then further subject to all, excuse me, plans and schematics attached to the staff report and all testimony, oral and written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No. Motion carries. Thank you. Any other items on the agenda this evening, or anything else from the city? I guess I should look to you, Ms.
I
Cerny.
wanted to give you an update. We do have the support of a new management analyst, so we actually have an additional staff resource, which is nice, part-time. That management analyst is doing research on regulations for outdoor speakers, music, amplified music in other communities. Commissioner Moorhead suggested some communities outside of this area that we should look at, and provided some information. Right. So we're looking both at communities in this area as well as some far-flung communities. I suggested I go visit those, but so we will bring that back to you at your next meeting, which I believe is scheduled for September 14th.
14th.
So we will poll you in advance. The working group for the Central Business District chapter of the Comprehensive Plan has started its work, and we will likely have the consultants reach out to members of the commission who are interested in doing just a one-on-one interview, a phone interview, a remote interview. We're not doing in person, but just to get, certainly the entire Plan Commission will have an opportunity to view the work of this group. And I will note that Commissioner Pasquesi and Commissioner Moorhead are both part of that group. But the Plan Commission as a whole will ultimately see the recommendation that comes out of that group, and you are the body that's responsible for holding the formal public hearings and making a recommendation to council. So that work is underway.
So approximately, when do you think that would be done? Just curious.
I'm hoping it would be before the
November?
Plan Commission. I'm hoping in October.
Okay.
I know I've been told I'm overly optimistic, but between now and then, we will, the consultants are doing some focus groups, they're doing these individual interviews, and then as some ideas, concepts, vision, policies perhaps come out of the working group, we'll be holding at least one community workshop, but we're also, our consultants, creating a website for that specific project. And we'll be doing outreach to allow people virtually to respond to different ideas. So we're trying to get input in different ways, certainly reaching out to business owners, property owners, residents in the area. And then we have a list of just others in the community. It's good to hear from people who live in the community but don't necessarily have a business or an immediate vested interest in property in this area. So lots of work to do, but it's an exciting project, and I think it's this got delayed. We were supposed to move into it in March of 2020. Yes. And it got completely stopped. If we had done this work in 2020 or even in 2019, I think we wouldn't have had the benefit of kind of seeing where we are today, which is seeing that there are some possibilities and there is some energy, and you'll probably hear the music from the loudspeakers when you go out into the parking lot tonight. So I don't hear anything. You can observe that and see how you feel about it.
Two quick questions, and then everybody can end their evening, or they can go now. But it's similar to what we did with Settler Square, right? This plan,
Yes.
right? Looking at, and how we looked at the plan and how the plan comes before us, correct? Okay.
And Route 60 too.
And Route 60, I remember that as well.
Those two chapters are done.
Yeah. And then my other question is, because this has come up on other matters since I've been on the Plan Commission, is Bank Lane being looked at, and the changing Bank Lane into one direction, one way?
All that's on the table.
All that's on the table,
We're trying
right.
to identify issues, identify opportunities, identify challenges. At the first meeting of this group, we actually did a walking tour of not the entire Central Business District, but a lot of it. And we really worked hard to keep saying, don't move to solutions. That we're not there. We really want to gather a bunch of ideas. So really, everyththing on the table.
Yeah. No, there are a lot of issues. That's why I raised that for everybody else to start thinking about it.
And I will add too, we are doing an internal brainstorming session involving police, fire, all of our crews that maintain the infrastructure, and hear from them about snow plowing and water issues. And so we're really trying to look at this holistically and get different viewpoints, because to improve pedestrian experience, some people talk about a different surface, and then we do that, and then we hear from our snowplow crews that, we can't clean this, or we've, destroyed, X feet of this, and now it needs to be replaced. So it's, as with everything you do, it's an interesting balance of how do you strike the right balance? So
Has there been any anecdotal feedback from either residents or the Colonial folks about the addition of the Colonial?
Very positive. I've reached out to residents along Oakwood and Ridge Lane just to kind of gauge their, the sign's a bit different, the light's a bit different, the music, they can't hear the music. They're aware of it, but to date, I think we're going to connect with them in the winter, particularly about the lights. We've had some issues with trash collection, and we've already made some modifications as part of the work they're doing to resurface our parking lot. Not the one right behind City Hall, but the further one. We've expanded that trash area to accommodate some of the increased trash that we're seeing. And we certainly have seen a difference in parking when you go out tonight. I used to go out after everyone left and it'd be empty in the parking lot. That's not the case anymore. And the working group has already acknowledged that parking is gonna be an issue.
But generally, people are pretty pleased with the improvements to the property and obviously the addition of that caliber of restaurant. It's been positive. That's great.
Yes, it's been positive.
Excellent.
It's great.
I haven't been able to get in yet, so.
That's the comment we hear.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Is it adjourned formally?
Oh, formal adjournment. I guess we just were chatting and obviously we're live. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We're just gonna walk off without being adjourned.